things are happening without me knowing it. Oh, I love it. You know, I'm of the mind that everyone has a holy job to do while here on earth. Everyone. As one wise person said, and I think Josh quoted him a couple weeks ago, the purpose of life is to find your purpose and live it fully. Think about that. The purpose of life is to find your purpose and live it fully. And I must say that I'm a bit concerned for our society where the focus is not on learning your purpose, but getting a good job. I know so many, think about the ads. It's about security. It's about getting a job. It's about providing for your family, and I'm all for those things. There is this profound difference between a job and a vocation, however, a huge difference. Today's lesson is about the journey of Paul from his job to his vocation. And what a journey it was, a journey that is our own if you start seeing this as a metaphor for all of our lives. Saul, you see, which means prayed for, was a working man who was educated in Tarsus. Tarsus is kind of like a university town. They had a bunch of colleges and universities there. So he was well studied. He knew what the law was, and he was a lawyer, and he was working as a prosecutor for the temple government, which ran the show. What he was doing was finding little Christian communities and arresting everybody, taking them back to Jerusalem, trying them and killing them. Good job. He was good at it. His job was prosecuting Christians who were, according to his own Jewish dogma, were practicing sacrilegious acts against the temple itself. He was good at his job, prosecuting and executing. So here's this man, Saul, the prayed for one, doing his job, and while traveling to Damascus, all of a sudden he is struck down in a blinding light, and he hears for the first time a call to his soul, a call from Jesus. He follows Jesus' instructions and is led to the city of Damascus, where his eyes are opened not just to the world, but to himself and his own purpose, bigger than the prosecutorial role that he had. And I love the way that the Message said it. I'm going to show Saul what he's really in for. Because I want you all to know that really following this presence called Jesus Christ is not always comfortable. And I don't mean in the world, I mean in our own soul. Sometimes we have to face stuff in ourselves that is not pleasant. I came from the South, and as I shared in class, once in a while these thoughts come up in me, and they're racist thoughts, and I have to go, ooh, icky, where did that come from? Not pleasant, and it's in me, and it hurts. But that's part of the work, isn't it? Waking up, these little moments, these little noticings. Well, Paul had more than a little noticing that day, let me tell you. And Paul means small, so he went from the prayed for one to the small one. So here we have this human being becoming his purpose. It is regrettable that so often it takes some kind of trauma or life event to get our attention, to get us to pay attention to our own inner state of affairs. And the inner state of affairs is really what the journey is about. You see, that's what it is all about. That's what the whole tradition of Christianity is about, this inner state of affairs. Everything flows from the measure of truth and lovingness of our hearts. You look at the world around us, read the newspaper. The newspaper is an analog of the state of the world's heart. There's good stuff in there. I mean, I don't know about you, but I stood up and cheered when SpaceX rocket finally hit that landing. That excited me because I know what it means for the human family to be able to come and go within our own gravity well, if you will. But we also see what's happening across this country as new truths find themselves. People who are gay, people who are find themselves in a body that does not match their gender understanding. And we find states literally creating laws against these people. What's happening? Well, literally the American heart is being sorted out in front of us right before our eyes through laws, through what is right. You want to know what's in America's heart? Just watch it. Don't judge yet. Watch it. It'll take the laws slow, but you watch what happens. Same thing happened with civil rights. You know, it was amazing. You see, this inner state of affairs. Two of my favorite words were our focus this morning in spirit class, and the words are ordination and dharma. You see, when we think of ordination, you look at me or Edie or ordained ministry. But the fact is, every one of us is ordained. Every one of us. In this tradition of disciples, we call it the priesthood of all believers. That's why we don't have doctrines or dogmas. That's why we don't say that you have to be a man or a priest or a minister ordained to share the meal. That's why anybody can get up here and do what I do if you're a believer. I don't need a priest to be my confessor. I need a good friend. See what I'm saying? It's an amazing thing when we start embodying this tradition in a way that is a reflection of our hearts. But I want us to get that everything in the world is flowing out of our hearts, out of our souls. And so the primary task of a church, in my mind, is to create an understanding that the heart is a garden and we're growing stuff there. And what are the fruits of what we're growing? Is it fear? Is it hate? Is it constriction? Or is it expansion? Is it a seeking for truths that might even indict ourselves? Is it a justice circuit that keeps pushing us past ourselves, that we are called to become a better person in spite of ourselves? And I assure you, all the places I've become a better person, not all of them, I won't say that, but many of them are in spite of myself. They weren't things that I said, okay, I'm down with this. There were things that I went kicking and screaming. And when I finally got to the other side, I went, oh, that was cool. But at each place, there's more responsibility, and that's the part that's hard. Two of my favorite words, ordination and dharma. In the West, it's to ordain a holy and divine purpose. Everybody has that. It might not be your profession, but wherever your profession is, you can bring this vocation of love. And then there's the word dharma in the East, which means holy and divine purpose. It's used to say truth, path, but basically what dharma is, it's the truth of the path of you. Judy's dharma is finding Judy and waking up to the truth of that she might live it fully. Now, does that mean she's going to figure herself out? No. She's going to find how deep and mysterious she really is and go, praise God. Ain't no way I can figure this out. I'm just going to go with it. And you ride the wave of love. That's what each of us are trying to do. I'm going to say even consciously or unconsciously. Both of these words reflect who we are in our deepest gifts and intentions. Now, most inner work is about this process of uncovering our deepest nature that we might be used in the name of life, love, and truth. I can't remember what book it was, Kurt Vonnegut Jr. At the very end of it, he's with a guy and he's really ticked off that he got used. And the whole point of the story was, well, everybody gets used. It's like, what did you get used by? Well, he realized that he got used by some really good forces. He put himself in the current of good things. So yeah, we're all going to get used, but who do you want to get used by? What do you want to get used by? And what intent? What do you want? What are the fruits that you want to put in the world? See, it matters. It matters. This is what's going on right now, whether you participate consciously or unconsciously. Every human being is part of this. One of my favorite writers is James Hollis, and he's an atheist, but he's a Jungian. And he says there is an inner agency in each of us, and it is working to create symmetry in our being, balance. Now, I know that's that agent as Jesus Christ. He just doesn't want to put a name on it. But it's real. And it's trying to make sense of your life, again, many times in spite of us, because we're so hung in our own ways. Now, not all of us are going to find our vocations in our professions, as I said earlier, but our professions can amplify our vocations once we become aware of them. And I'm going to suggest that the ordination circuit for each of us is to be in a situation where we can serve in some way. We can take who we are and know that when we touch the world with what's most authentic in ourselves, the world becomes a better place. It's good medicine. That's what all of us deeply, most delightfully really want. And I mean, honest, I study Hitler's life, and I think that's even what he wanted. It's just it was so messed up that to create the symmetry in his soul, he had to go so far out that it screwed up the whole world. But I want to suggest that what did that was the state of his heart, which was imbalanced because he was a human being. And the inner agency could not compensate. Could not. Now I want to tell you a story of someone that comes up over and over, a guy named John Newton. Now John Newton was the son of a ship captain. And he was brought up in a pretty harsh environment where he was beat up a lot. He was flogged because his father was a furrowed brow man. And then when he finally got out from under his father's tutelage, he ended up working on a ship as a midshipman. But he saw the conditions of the ship that were so bad that he deserted. And he got caught. And he was demoted to a seaman. And then he said, well, can I be put on a slave ship? So he got put on a slave ship. And while he was working on a slave ship, he met a friend of his father's who helped him and took him under his wing. And eventually, John Newton became the captain of a slave ship. Very lucrative. You know, you sail to Western Africa, you pick up your crew, and you take them. He didn't like the condition of the slaves, and he kept trying to improve it, whatever that meant in those days. But one time he was sailing across the Atlantic, and he hit a storm. And as I read the story, I keep thinking of Forrest Gump. Remember his cohort without legs in that storm, and he's on the mast, and he's cursing God? Come on, give me all you got. I keep thinking maybe that's what it looked like. Maybe that's what John Newton was saying. But after the storm, something opened in him. His own fear, his own life came into reflection. And he went to his cabin and he began to read a man named Thomas Kempis. And then he felt this grace rise up in him. And he wrote a song called Amazing Grace. And he could not be a slave ship captain anymore. And he just couldn't. So he stopped. See, when I think of the word wretched soul, I heard the kids sing that one time, and I said, no, that's why I put not wretched, but a soul like mine, because most of us aren't wretched. You know, I see my racism once in a while, and I go, ooh, that's wretched. But most of us are not. But he was. He brought so much suffering to the world, and yet he felt the opening, and he dived through it. By the way, he became a pastor. When he first tried to become, the church laughed at him, and he kept going. He kept preaching the word, and finally they gave him a little church, and pretty soon that church was packed every week, and pretty soon he was going from church to church and preaching because he knew grace. It wasn't something up here in his head. It was in here in his body where he felt things, where he realized what was growing in here had fruit that was eaten out here and lived out here and either fed or took food, the nourishing substance from human beings. And he made a choice. Amazing grace. This is the moment of God, from wretched to gracious. It is happening in each of us. I always say I'm always working on the Red Hawk Gracification Project. Sadly, as we learn, and from a fellow theologian, this is what he said: too much popular Christianity tends to present faith as a technique for getting what we want out of God. Too much of popular Christianity tends to present faith as a technique for getting what we want out of God. Vocation, on the other hand, is a reminder that Christianity is God's means of getting what God wants out of us. And that's what's going on right here, right now. It's happening in your souls. You know, I always say I love listening to sermons because I lose track, because somebody will say something and I'll be over here doing my own inner work. And then I'll come back and I'll go, what did you say? But that's what it's about. We're all doing it. And not only are we doing it, but it's doing us. And that's good news. As I said in class today, we can resist change to the end of everything, but we can't stop it. So where are you going to be in the circuit? The true vocation or ordination in Dharma is about entering the realm of responsibility. I'll tell you what, the day that Christ came into my life, and the way I say it and the way I learn it is Jesus, when he comes into your heart, doesn't come alone. He brings every suffering person in the world with him. You know those people on the street that you shake your head? They're right there with Jesus when he comes into your heart. People say, I got Jesus in my heart. And I say, you got the homeless there? You got the kids being raped by the church? You got the kids in Africa? You got all those folks? Because they're all right there with them. The whole world comes in. And unless you've got that, unless you're feeling it, what you've got is some intellectual thing going on. Entering into the realm of responsibility. We are all called to be God's appointed means of getting back the world that belongs to God. When you leave here, that's your purpose. To reclaim this world in the name of love, in the name of the very life that we seem to be contradicting, in the name of this truth that's trying to speak to us new realities, that we might recalibrate the world, that we might shift and dare to turn and face the light again. May we pray?